Now, what brands appeal to the youth market, and are marketers themselves doing enough to attract youngsters? Well, an annual award show is just the place to get that answer. Mags of Media Correspondent Yashini Padayachee went along to the 10th annual Sunday Times Generation Next Awards.
The Sunday Times Generation Next Awards are not just an opportunity to find out what brands are most popular among the youth, but it's also a chance for brand managers and for marketers to find out what they're doing right and what they can be doing better.
I think a brand appeals to me if it's obviously something I'm interested in and if it speaks to me in the medium that I'm interested in. For example, if it's only advertised in a newspaper, I probably will never see it, so it does not appeal to me. But if it's on the internet, it definitely appeals to me.
HDI youth marketers conducted the survey.
South Africa is a young country, so we have about 25 million young people who are 23 or younger. So there is a significant market, and they're the market who chooses new things first. So if you're launching something, they're the guys you have to get to like it right up front.
The results also showed the influence the youth have on market trends.
Young people want new, fresh stuff. They don't want to see the same thing that they saw 6 years ago.
Some brands like Spur, Vodacom and Coca-Cola are repeat favorites among young people aged 8 to 23. But the big winner was BMW. It was named coolest overall brand and seems to be the car the youth market aspires to drive. Yashini Padayachee for Mags on Media.
Now, all too often we see the same people talking about the same topics in the media, and they become familiar and trusted and well-liked and the go-to people when discussing specific industries. So how do you break through that clutter to become the go-to name in your specific industry? In other words, a bona fide personal brand. Douglas Kruger is the author of a new book. It's called Own Your Industry, a new publication by Penguin, and he's going to unpack some of that with us this morning. Douglas, welcome to you. Let me suggest to you, in this age of 24-hour news, social media, we have experts falling out of trees. All too often, we recycle them and they become charlatans. Do you agree with that premise?
I think you're dead right. The idea there, Jeremy, in fact, the underlying principle is, why do they rise to the top and become used over and over again? And I think the simple answer to that is that the media choose through content and they have time pressures. So positioning yourself as the go-to person is certainly a good idea from a branding point of view. From the media's perspective, yes, you don't want to end up dealing with the charlatans. You want the people who know what they're talking about.
Having said that, you also say in the book that experts are never experts by accident. In other words, they work very hard at becoming that. They have something new to offer all the time. Where's the starting point here?
Well, absolutely. The first idea that we have to really buy into is that it is not just about your qualifications. You stand up in front of a group of people and you say, who's the first chef that springs to mind? And you will always get names like, say, a Nigella Lawson. And the interesting thing there is there are people who are more qualified than Nigella, much more qualified, thousands of them, and yet Nigella is out-earning all of them combined. And what that tells us is that it is not just the qualification that matters. There's more to it than that. In fact, if you think of someone like Jeremy Clarkson, his show, Top Gear, is dealing with the same raw material that every other media show about vehicles has to use. And yet, he's at the helm of this media juggernaut. Half the world hates him, half the world loves him.
So there's a common thread there. They are there simply by force or dint of personality.
Personality is what I believe is one of the three elements that make up an expert. I think it is expertise is the one, the knowledge. The second one that people tend to miss is personality, and the third one is publicity. Personality tends to be the missing one. The way I always phrase it is, if you have all the knowledge but none of the personality, you are merely a specialist. If you have all the personality but none of the knowledge, you're a Kardashian.
All right, that's a nice way of putting it. So you've got those three things in place, but most importantly, you've got to package the ideas you suggest in a unique framework.
Yes.
In other words, Douglas Kruger, you've actually got to do a bit of work before you can get this out in the marketplace. How do you embark on that packaging process?
Right. Well, the frameworks, that's a very powerful idea. I mean, just for example, if I say Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that's one of the world's best-known frameworks. And of course, that's Kiyosaki, and it started off as his book, but it's now a board game, a series of shows, seminars, etc., etc. But they all use that core branding, that simple idea that people get straight away, rich dad, poor dad. So the difficult part is determining how to wrap up your complicated communication ideas into something simple.
What's the tipping point that you're talking about?
Right, tipping points are when you start to create tribes of believing followers and they become your advocates. So if you think of just the example of, say, a brand like Dove has gone beyond the idea of having to sell its own products, and now people are perpetuating things like the Real Beauty campaign, and that sells their product for them. So here you have a company that essentially sells soap, but they have tribes of believing followers who want to send their message out on their behalf. Jeremy Clarkson doesn't have to advertise. People talk among themselves and love and respect what he does, or hate it, but that's equally good.
Or just insult a nation or someone. All very well to do this, but content is king as far as all of this is concerned.
Absolutely.
You've got to stay fresh. You've got to stay ahead of the curve.
Yes, real experts are constant producers, and their mental factory lights are always blazing. They are always coming up with new content and putting it out into the world, and that is a very big part of their publicity. If you think about the number of people that I'm sure you've met who have said that one day they will write a book, versus the number of people who have actually done so, writing a book and then going on to the next thing, that's the big part. Even someone like a Stephen King, who is arguably the world's best-selling living writer, if he had stopped at the first one, at Carrie, we wouldn't know who he is today. But 4 decades of production later, people don't care what he writes. They'll buy it in advance of its release.
This is a book that we certainly recommend. Own Your Industry, How to Position Yourself as an Expert. The ever-eloquent Douglas Kruger. Thank you very much for joining us. Finally this week, as US First Lady Michelle Obama joins an online campaign to bring home the 276 girls kidnapped from their school in Nigeria by Islamic militants on April 14 this year, the plight of the girls has now inspired some creative and thought-provoking advertising. This print ad that we're putting up is simple and powerful, and it was published in a Nigerian newspaper this week, and it certainly caught our eye. It's powerful imagery. We'll also put the ad up on our Facebook page, and you can let us know what you think. Next week, how a South African ad agency cracked an ad for the global Jack Daniels brand. Until next week, goodbye to you, and thank you for watching.
ENCA.com.